the rankings are not the issue, guys. I look aggravated, but not with the rankings. The rankings are okay. The rankings don't even look all that different than the JP poll. It's the format that's the problem. Has been. It was the moment that came out with this thing, and now it's really, really manifesting itself into a grade A mess. Well, depending on how you look at the sport. Look, it's Tuesday night. It's November 26th. It's the year of our Lord 2024. We're jam-packed high atop a festive but confused downtown Nashville, Tennessee. Proudly brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors. There's a lot to get to. We're starting the show a little bit later than we normally do because we had the playoff rankings come out. I got full reaction to that. I got a lot of chaos scenarios to talk about. It's Tuesday night, so we've got full predictions for Rivalry weekend. I got games galore that we're going to talk about. I got 4 added best bets on tonight's show. Mack Brown's getting fired. I got to talk about that. We got a new JP poll dropping. I know a lot of you were on the road this week, so I told Jesse and Colin, let's just stack this thing. You probably won't even be able to listen to all this in one sitting, and that's okay. Food and our show this week, no different. They're watching us in DeKalb, Illinois, Ocilla, Georgia, Jefferson City, Missouri, and Wichita Falls, Texas. Appreciate you guys so much. Make sure you're following @LateKickJosh on Instagram, because this is the last time I'm talking to you before these games happen Saturday. We're going to be in College Station Saturday night, and it is going to be a wild scene at Kyle Field. And I'm going to have sideline access, so I'm going to have a lot for you in the Instagram story. But that's for the future. How about the here and now? College football playoff rankings just got released. This paper's still hot. The bracket doesn't matter right now, guys, because we've got to find out who the conference champs are. Until you get those seeded, because we've got auto bids. More on that in a second. This is really meaningless. Texas A&M's a perfect example. Texas A&M's number 20 right now. Texas A&M could end up with a first-round bye if they win against Texas and they go win the SEC championship. So it doesn't really matter. If this thing worked the way it should, and you just took the top 12 whatever and no one had auto bids, then the rankings would matter. The bracket would matter, but the projected bracket doesn't matter right now. Having said that, I find it interesting as we look at the way the top 25 broke down. There's a lot of SEC teams in there. They got 8 of them in there. That's pretty normal. 5 Big Ten, pretty normal. The Big 12's got 5 teams in the top 25. And yet I'm being told the Big 12 champ could be left out of the playoff. Well, that's some garbage on the surface, but especially if you're telling me that league largely plays each other. All the contenders kind of have played each other, and a champ could emerge from a conference with 5 teams ranked in the top 25 and could be left out. What are we talking about? We'll see. 3 from the ACC, and hey, they could all make it. So, yeah, that's where we are right now. 3 G5s are ranked in the top 25. Notre Dame's in there. South Carolina's in a weird spot. So, South Carolina is number 15 right now. I got no problem with that. Like, I'm sky high on South Carolina, just like most people on the committee are. They play at number 12 Saturday. So South Carolina's number 15. They play at number 12. And so you would think that they are like really, really custom made to springboard into the top 12 potentially with a win. And I know why you think that. But here's the funny thing about that. Bama, if they beat Auburn, and Ole Miss, if they beat Mississippi State, they're both double-digit favorites. If that were to happen, those 2 teams would not have nearly as impressive a win this weekend as South Carolina would, but they both have head-to-head wins over South Carolina. So there's this weird sort of dichotomy of, okay, do we think South Carolina's the better team that just got the better win, and is that enough to vault them over a couple of teams that beat them, or do we view those resumes still as comparable enough where head-to-head factors in? Because that's one of the age-old bits of criteria here. If you've got comparable teams, comparable resumes, that's when head-to-head factors in. And the only way you can rank one of these teams above the others in sort of a comparative analysis, if they've got a head-to-head loss with them, is the team that lost we still view as definitively better. That happens sometimes. Would it happen there? I'm also really noticing that the more this bracket comes into focus, the more you've got a Penn State just kind of floating there in the 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever range. Notre Dame, same thing. They're floating in what we would call the home field territory range. The more it becomes pretty obvious, we're going to have some cold weather home games. Teams that won't have a first-round bye, but they will have a first-round home game Right now, the way that bracket sets up, we would see a game played in State College, we'd see one played in South Bend. Athens, Georgia is not warm in December, but compared to the other two, relatively speaking, it is. We'd also have one in Columbus, Ohio. So there is cold weather on the horizon. Arizona State, I mean, prayers if you guys have to go to Columbus, Ohio. If you got to play Ohio State on the moon, it would be tough, but you got to play them in 25-degree weather. That's tough. The SEC champion runner-up could be left out. I'd never thought that was possible. When I first saw the way the format worked, I thought to myself, well, the SEC champion will always be in. The Big Ten champion will always be in, but also the other team that plays in that conference title game will be in. Because I just thought to myself, there's not a world where a team is good enough to make it to Atlanta, but not be good enough to still be in the top 12 when all is said and done, even if they lose. But we are in that world, and I'm not disagreeing with it. We are in a world where A&M's at 20. They play Texas this weekend. If they beat them, which is their only route to Atlanta, if they beat them, they would jump up. They probably wouldn't jump up into the top 12 or top 10 or whatever, and that's important because at that point, my own personal theory is in play there. You know, my theory has always been, you can't punish a team for losing a conference title game. But what I've always meant by that, if I haven't clarified it enough, I will now, is if you're in the top 12 and you lose your conference title game, especially in the SEC or the Big Ten, you should not be punished and dropped. I don't think A&M would even be in the top 12 in that scenario. So if they lose to Georgia, they would be out of the playoff, but that's because they never would have been in the playoff before the game. My problem is going to be if we get to some year, maybe this year, maybe another year, where you're like number 10 and you lose the conference title game and they drop you to 14 or 13, then I got a big problem. But having said that, you notice I keep specifying the SEC and the Big Ten. It's because I think those conferences will be given preferential treatment. And due to the quality of team and quality of schedule in those conferences, I get it. They're deeper conferences. Whether you like that or not, that's true. I think they could do this to an ACC runner-up. I think they could do this certainly to a Big 12 runner-up. They may keep the Big 12 champion out. I don't think that'll happen, but some people do think that'll happen. But, man, Notre Dame's sitting there right now at number 5. You know Notre Dame's got the 5th best odds to win it all. Now, there's a little drop-off between 4 and 5, but Notre Dame's number 5. Hey, do you think if they lose to USC, they drop all the way out? I do, depending on how it shakes out behind them. I do. 6.5 to a 7.5-point favorite, depending on when you've looked at that line this week. Notre Dame plays at USC this weekend. Do they, at the College Football Playoff Committee headquarters, do they really mean what they say when they say we will not care if we put a rematch in the first round? We will not care if it's conference versus conference in the first round. I think they kind of mean it, but I also don't think they 100% mean it. Like if you have watched a movie before and you've seen this guy tell this girl, I would never be unfaithful to you, but then this really extreme kind of circumstance, exception to the rule factor enters the equation and he's unfaithful. Well, he didn't really mean that he'd never be unfaithful. And shame on him, by the way. We do not support infidelity of any kind on this program. However, we also understand in the College Football Playoff Committee room, they speak in absolutes. They say we will never factor in whether it's a rematch or not when we're seeding this. But I think they may. I think they may. And the other thing to keep in mind, and I'm not sure where the committee would fall on this, but like right now, we have got an SEC versus SEC in the first round, Tennessee, Georgia, and we've got a Big Ten in the first round, Indiana, Penn State. Now, obviously, that guarantees those major conferences that one of their teams is knocked out in the first round. I don't think they love that. Now, it shouldn't matter. You guys are screaming right now. You're saying, there he goes, being preferential to the big conferences. I'm not. I'm telling you, it shouldn't matter. What I'm doing is I'm asking, but will it matter? That's what I'm asking. Indiana's in this thing, by the way. That was one of the big takeaways. We got a lot of folks watching the show, by the way. I appreciate it. Do me a favor. Check and see if you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. If you're not, the only Christmas present I ask for is that you click the subscribe button. If you're listening on podcast, click that follow/subscribe button. And if you think you're already subbed, chances are you may not be. It doesn't cost anything. It doesn't sign you up for anything. It just makes sure we can bring the show to you year-round free of charge. So that's all I ask. Indiana's in this thing, man. I was very speculative last week. If they lost, would they be out? Well, everyone else fell behind them. So not only are they in, I was listening to Ward Manuel talk on the playoff reveal show. He said their body of work warrants them being in. I agree now. I agree. The circumstances changed around Indiana. So now I agree. There's still a lot to sort out. Everyone's had this mentality all week. I don't know if you've sensed this or maybe you've reflected this. Everyone's just talking about the playoff, and the games are still happening. Everyone's talking about conference championships, and the regular season is still happening. Miami's not in the conference title game yet. Guys, they've still got to play Syracuse. So the Big 12 certainly not sorted out. Ohio State's not in the Big 10 title game. They've still got to beat Michigan. Now, you may think they're going to, but I guarantee you thought a lot of things would happen last week. I know I did. And then all of a sudden they didn't. Shame on the script writers for making a fool out of me last week. I got more on this. Just hold on. I got more on this. Academy Sports and Outdoors, one-stop shop for everything. Christmas list, check. You're done. Go to Academy Sports and Outdoors. You're done. If you live in certain parts of the country, there's one on every street corner. If you don't live in those parts of the country, you've still got the internet. Academy.com has your hookup. They've got sporting goods equipment. They've got camping equipment, rafting equipment, hunting equipment. They've got everything that you need. They got clothing all over the place. I went in an academy in Athens, Georgia a couple of weeks ago. It's a great thing because you walk in and you smell this mixture of like the smell a new basketball gives you, but also the smell that new clothing gives you and the smell that a new shoe gives you, and it's just all wafting. It's great. It's like walking into a steakhouse, but for merchandise. It's a great thing. And Academy's been with us from the beginning, and they make the show free of charge to you. So that, along with you subscribing to the channel, is what keeps the lights on around here, and it's got this great new set that we have. So we appreciate Academy Sports and Outdoors. Okay, back to the matter at hand. College football playoff chaos is inevitable. The only thing we're trying to figure out is where's it going to come? Like, which angle is it going to come from? These rankings right now are not the problem. The format is. The format's insane. Auto bids are insane. It's always been a problem. It's a big problem now. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to show you something. I've got exclusive from FanDuel, the odds on all of the first-round games. So we've got the first-round games. Arizona State versus Ohio State in Columbus. Ohio State would be a 21-point favorite. I'm going to come back to this, so just hold on. Tennessee at Georgia. Georgia minus 8.5. Indiana at Penn State minus 9.5. SMU at Notre Dame minus 10. So in those first-round games, you notice there wouldn't be any line below 8.5. That's the first thing. Second thing is we got a big problem. I mean, this format is a big problem, and it did not take until week 13 for some of us to realize that. The format of this thing is a much bigger problem than the rankings are. Auto bids are a disaster of an idea. I know people meant well enough when they got in the room and they said, we got to incentivize winning conference championships. Well, that only makes sense in a playoff format if all your conferences are roughly equal. In the NFL, you get rewarded because the AFC East and the AFC West and North and South, while they're not exactly equal, it's still 4 professional football teams playing in every one of those divisions. So yes, you get rewarded in certain ways. You get guaranteed certain things if you win those. That is not the way college football should work unless you're looking to have an experiment with your playoff instead of truly reward the best teams and the most deserving teams, because in this case, they do overlap. They go hand in hand. So let me explain to you, now that rubber is meeting the road and people are seeing how farcical this could actually be, what I'm talking about. Oregon and Ohio State, in all likelihood, will play in the Big Ten championship game as the top 2 seeds in America, as they should. They've earned it. They deserve it. I got no problem with it. Someone's going to lose that game, and that someone will probably drop to the 5 seed. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, it's Ohio State. Do you understand with the way this thing is currently set up? Ohio State has to drop out of the top 4 because they're not a conference champ. So we got to make room for a Boise State. That's right, kids. Boise State would be guaranteed a higher seat at the table than Ohio State because they won the What is it? What is it? Mountain West, you know, because all conference champs are created equal these days. Everyone deserves a seat at the table. That makes you feel good. That's bumper sticker logic. It's stupid, but it's bumper sticker logic. So, you know, for the sake of making everyone feel good, let's go with it. Well, let me tell you how dumb this is. Ohio State would drop to the 5 seed. They'd be punished. They'd drop to the 5 seed. As this thing is currently stacked up, Ohio State would play Arizona State in the first round. And then they would advance to play Boise State in the second round if they won. Ohio State would be a 3+ touchdown favorite in each of those games. Now, sure, they'd have to play one more game. They wouldn't get that first round bye. But I'm going to suggest to you that Oregon, sitting there with a first round bye playing Georgia, is in a much less advantageous position than Ohio State playing 2 teams. The data and analytics crowd can shove it on this. I'm right. And if you're Ohio State, you know good and well you like your odds of beating Arizona State and Boise State back-to-back, especially with one of them being at home, over having to play Georgia. I'm not saying you're guaranteed to lose against Georgia. You may even be favored against Georgia for all I know. But you know Georgia's athletic profile. You know Kirby Smart. And you also know Arizona State and Boise State, all due respect, have no business on the same field as you in a postseason setting. So that's what first-round buys are now locking in for us. There's no way that the SEC and the Big Ten are going to sign back off on this beyond 2026. I don't think they are. Is there room for a 3-loss SEC team in this thing? There is, but some stuff's got to happen. I'm not going to be fighting for this because once you've lost that many games, especially some in egregious fashion, like Bama Vanderbilt or Ole Miss Kentucky, you've lost benefit of the doubt with me. I may have you power rated high, but at this point, if you're in, good for you. If you're out, it's your fault. If Notre Dame loses this weekend to USC, it opens the door maybe. If Clemson loses to South Carolina, and Clemson is pretty overrated as a team in the playoff rankings right now, if Clemson loses, that opens a door. I think just if those two things happen, a spot is open. I'd be really interested to see what happens if UNLV beats Boise in their conference title game. Be really interested in that. And speaking of that, is there a chance that we have 2 G5 teams in the playoff? The answer is yes. I may think it's ridiculous. I may think a G5 playoff should exist, but it doesn't. So this is what we have right now. This is the current format. You're kidding yourself if you're denying that this could happen. This could absolutely happen. I mean, Tulane, I think, is the best G5 team in the country right now. They're behind Boise. I'd favor them by 7 against Boise on a neutral field for whatever that's worth to you. But look, if Boise wins out, yes, they're in this thing. They probably get a first-round bye. If Tulane wins out, they're red hot right now. If Tulane wins out, there is a chance that they are ranked higher than the Big 12 champ. There is a chance of that. And remember, we're just taking the 5 highest ranked conference champs. So the Big 10 would be in. The SEC would be in. The ACC would be in. In this scenario, Boise would be in with the Mountain West. There's a chance Tulane with the AAC is higher ranked than whoever comes out of the Big 12. I don't think it should be that way, conditionally. I'd have to see what the resumes look like. But because I think the caliber of schedule you play in the Big 12 is that much tougher than in any G5 conference. But I am not on the committee, nor am I scheduled to be on it next year, I don't think. So, yes, that could happen. In the ACC, there's another little chaos scenario that could unfold. You know, Clemson plays South Carolina Saturday. Let's say they win, and then they're done. So let's just say Miami and SMU do end up going to the ACC championship game. Clemson wins Saturday. They're done for the regular season. They just sit at home. They beat a top 15 team to close the season. They're probably in the playoff. If just that happened, if Clemson just beats South Carolina, they're probably in the playoff. What I want to know is if Clemson beats South Carolina and SMU beats Miami close, how does a top 10 Clemson, you know what? You know, forget that, because I'm talking about how they get 3 in. Let's say Clemson were to win this Saturday and Miami doesn't. So Miami goes to Syracuse. So let's say Miami loses and they're out. Or maybe SMU loses, who knows. But let's say somehow Clemson gets in that ACC championship game and they're sitting there as like the 9 seed or the 10 seed, and they lose. Do you think the committee would drop them out? Do you think the committee would punish them for playing a conference title game? Because remember, we've talked about that in the SEC. We've talked about that in the Big Ten. We never had reason to talk about this scenario in the ACC because up until very recently, the ACC didn't have enough contenders with a leg to stand on. Well, now, according to the committee, they do. So Clemson could win this Saturday. It's not a conference game, but Clemson wins this Saturday against South Carolina. Well, that would boost them up probably to number 10 or number 9 or something like that. If some craziness happens, they could go to the ACC championship game and lose. Would they fall out? Would the committee punish them? I don't know. We've always known the 5 seed was going to be a really, really good spot. And Ohio State is showing you. Like Ohio State, I just told you, they'd be a 21-point favorite against Arizona State. They'd be more than a 21-point favorite against Boise in the second round. But you notice what's happening with the 6 seed. Like the number 6 seed, depending on how this stuff falls, could draw like an Indiana and then SMU or someone like that if the conference championship game kind of falls a different way. My point is, not only is the 5 seed looking to potentially have a very navigable path, depending on how this stuff falls, you could say that about the 6 seed too. Meanwhile, number 7 seed is going to go play Georgia in round 1, and if you survive that, you're going to play Oregon in round 2. There is a big difference in the way those seedings are drawn up. So yes, we've got a bunch of chaos on tap. I don't have a huge problem with the rankings. I got a problem with the format. And you just either agree with me on that or you don't. I know that there is a school of thought that you have to keep the auto bids for the conference champs to maintain the sanctity of conference championships. And I say to that, it doesn't make enough sense to me. I don't care about your auto bids. I just think they should go to the top 4 teams regardless. The auto bid stuff for conference champs is insane. And you're about to see why. I don't think it may last all that long, but you're about to see why. All right, let's talk about Quick Trip because they are fueling our tour all across the country. And you guys know that we've been all across the country to the point where we need one of those maps. We should probably get graphics on that. That's a post-Thanksgiving project. Quick Trip, we've been giving out free tanks of gas all year long. They've been a phenomenal partner for us. Long time to come. We got a big plans on the horizon with Quick Trip. But in the immediacy, I'm going to drive home to Georgia tonight, go have some Thanksgiving, but then I'm headed to College Station Saturday for the whole new Saturday tour, proudly fueled by Quick Trip. It's Texas versus Texas A&M. I cannot tell you in strong enough terms how much I've been looking forward to this thing. We don't normally put that graphic full screen. I say we put that graphic full screen. I say we look at that thing like it's wallpaper. You don't understand the hatred. We're going to break the game down later in the show. The outright hatred in Texas versus Texas A&M is something that I don't think we can put into words. I'll try later. I don't think we can put it into words. But, oh, man, it's going to bleed through. It's going to be so beautiful. I just encourage you guys, the younger you are, the more I'm encouraging you, make sure you're watching this game Saturday. So that brings us to Texas A&M, Saturday, 7:30 Eastern, 6:30 Central. It's the ABC game of the week. We're going to be there. The whole new Saturday tour is going to have us right there on the sideline. But basically what I need to tell you all, outside of these two fan bases, is we got what we wanted. Back in August, a lot of us, myself included, looked at this and said, oh, wow, that's right. We get Texas and Texas A&M again. And then some of you, 18 years old, 20 years old, 21-year-old, most of our audience is under 30 years old. A lot of you hit me up and said, hey, I get they're close geographically, and they used to be in the same conference, but why do you keep making such a big deal about this? And I smiled. I wasn't sarcastic. I just smiled, and I said, you're going to learn something this year. And this Saturday, some of you are going to learn something about just the pure, unadulterated, unfiltered, unexplainable hatred. Hatred, contrary to what even Meemaw used to teach me, is not always a bad thing. Sometimes it can be a good thing, and it's a great thing in rivalries like this. The winner's going to Atlanta. And when I say we got what we wanted, what I hoped was that there would be implications on this beyond just the rivalry. Because, look, these two are going to get into a knife fight no matter what. But someone in Reno, Nevada may not care as much if one or both of them were out of the playoff race or the SEC championship race. Well, they're both in both of them. So we got what we wanted here. So now I got to ask Quinn Ewers, what are you going to do Saturday? Because this is a major Quinn Ewers game. Make no mistake about it, there is a gear that we saw them hit with him at quarterback against Alabama 2 years ago. And if you think about it, they've been a really good team. They've been one of the best in the country collectively. But I have not seen them hit that gear again. And I still believe it's there. I picked Texas to win the SEC. I picked them to go, I think, all the way to the national title game in the preseason. I picked them to do that because I think that gear is there. And they're still in contention for all that. And I guess it's a compliment to say they're in contention for all that, and I still think that extra gear is there. A&M is much better against the run than the pass, and I'm teeing all this up to say, hey, if it's there, maybe we'll see it click into gear here. They've got a really explosive and capable set of pass catchers. The A&M secondary, little paper popper of a stat here potentially, the A&M secondary is 100th or worse defending passes of 30, 40, 50 yards. In all those categories, they've been had. To a large degree, they've been had. So I've sat there and watched Texas. I've seen them play multiple times this year. They're, of course, undefeated when I watch them in person this year. But it hasn't been definitive. It hasn't been slam the door, Quinn Ewers over the top, and all those receivers. And maybe that's just not them this year. And that's okay. They can still win if it's not, but it certainly tees them up better to win if it is. Texas A&M's defense has been a letdown to me and that fan base over the past few games. They allowed 44 against South Carolina, 43 against Auburn. That was an overtime game, but still, it got to overtime because A&M's defense just not quite what it had been, which is disappointing because the players, man, I thought they had the gas in the tank to be a defensive-oriented team the whole year. And maybe Kyle Fields enough this Saturday. You know, maybe the redemption is there. This is a top 25 pressure unit. I think about Georgia, ironically, a couple of different ways here. I think about Georgia in a sense that this Texas offensive line got against Georgia. Georgia had 7 sacks and 10 tackles for loss. So there's that. And then there's also Texas going on the road and having to, try and operate in what will by far be the most hostile environment that they face all year. And I mentioned Georgia because I also can't help but remember Georgia just a short time ago go into Ole Miss. And that Ole Miss group of pass rushers got after Georgia. And Kirby Smart talked afterwards about how it's really tough to go against that group of pass rushers in this environment where your left tackle can't hear anything. So maybe that's how A&M flips this game. Because on paper, it looks good for Texas. But number one, we know what this is worth when it comes time to tee it up on Saturday. And number two, the way things have played out is not always the way they do play out. Here's the hardest part for me. Texas is what they are defensively. They are a high-level unit. As it relates to the country this year, Texas is an elite unit. They are top 15 against the run. They're number 1 in defending explosive plays. And so if I start to ask myself, if I want to take Texas A&M in this, and I start to ask myself, what do they need? I think you need 24 plus to win it. I think you'll have to get above that. And you can do that however you want to, but I can't factor in, I can't predict special team scores, defensive scores. So I got to assume that offensively, Marcel Reed's going to have to get the job done here, and Texas A&M's offense is going to have to get the job done here. A&M's 81st offensively on third down. Texas is top 10 in the country defensively against third down. So there's a lot of stuff that has to be overcome. But I'm telling you, this is not a game. I'll say it one more time. I always shake the paper. It's not a game played on paper. If it was, it would be undefeated picking games this year. And number two, it wouldn't be worth watching. Emotion is such a huge part of college football, and it will be at a premium. You will never see an emotional outpouring, just like a guttural hatred, like you will in this game when Texas comes into Kyle Field. Colin, let's take a look at what the model thinks. So right now at FanDuel, Texas is -5.5. Our model pretty much agrees. We've got Texas -6. I made some predictions about Texas in the preseason that I'm way too deep in to back off of now. But, man, I think this could be a dogfight because I do think the staying power is there. Like I think about A&M on the road last week. I think about a lot of these SEC teams on the road last week. And to me, if everything's still in play for you, the only thing that's changed here is you get to be the home team now, and they got to come in your building. And I don't really care what happened last week. Last week matters nothing to me as it relates to this game. So A&M absolutely has what it takes to win this thing. Texas is my pick for a reason. I am sticking with Texas. I think their best football is still in front of them. They need to find it this week. I am going to take Texas to win. I don't like the points. I think they're one or two too many there. I disagree with the model. So I think it's going to thread the needle. I think it's a very, very close game in the fourth quarter. So anything above 3, I'm actually taking Texas A&M plus the points, which is, it's a tightrope to walk there. I'll take Texas to win. I'll take A&M to cover. Neither outcome would shock me, but I am so happy. Just as an unbiased observer, if you live in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, you get to see what this is all about. And I know a lot of you have been waiting a long time to see what I was talking about with this game. You will see this weekend. Let's move on. It's rivalry week, obviously, so we've got a lot of rivalries to talk about. I've been at the game the past 3 years, Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan, whichever order you want to go in. I just list the road team first. So to me this year, it's Michigan versus Ohio State. It is Saturday. It is high noon. It is on Fox. And this will be a bloodthirsty crowd in the Horseshoe, a bloodthirsty fan base. You cannot overstate what this game has done to the Ohio State program mentally the past 3 years. I've been there. And I told this story. I'll tell it again. Just keep names out of it. Everyone talks about how important this rivalry is and how the magnitude of it can make or break careers and seasons. And sometimes that seems unfair, but it's also, that's the way that rivalry football is supposed to work. So it's both unfortunate and beautiful, depending on which side of it you're in. Ryan Day earlier this week talked about how, he said this now, next to losing his father, the outcome of this game has been as devastating in his life as pretty much anything else has been. And if you don't know college football and you don't know this rivalry, you look at that and you say, boy, man, that's all out of whack. His priorities are out of whack. Well, not if you're the head coach at Ohio State, it's not. It's not for everyone. That doesn't make sense to you. You're probably not cut out to be part of this rivalry. But the story I was going to tell you was a couple of years ago, last time this game was played in Columbus. I was there. I thought Ohio State would win the game because it was the year after the big snow globe game up at Michigan, and that was when Michigan had just won the first one. We didn't know it was going to be the first of 3 consecutive at least. And so the next year, Ohio State's favored. Looked like it was going to be bad weather earlier in the week, and then morning of, the sky's clear, and it's like 50 degrees at kickoff. Everything leans Ohio State, and then Michigan just pops explosive plays on them. Michigan takes over in the second half. They win. I was there covering the game for CBS. And so you go to a post-game press conference. I can't even remember which one I went to, but after you get out of there, you walk back down the tunnel. You go out on the field. Gelby's standing there. He's got our cameras and live shot set up. Take the mic in your hand, and you're doing a live hit. You're on air live with CBS. So I'm talking back and forth with the studio, and like I'm looking at the camera as I'm looking at this camera right now, and in my peripheral vision, like you got really bright lights in your face, so you can kind of see behind the camera, but you can't really see behind the camera because those lights kind of blind you. So I could tell that somebody was back there in the stands, and this is an hour after the game, man, so security has flushed the stadium out. And it was Ohio State players that had come back out of the locker room, seniors, who were never going to play in the rivalry again. They were never going to play in that stadium again. And they were sitting in the stands, just like uncontrollably bawling their eyes out. That's what this one means. And it is get right time for Ohio State because they are favored by 20.5 right now at FanDuel. This is one of the FBS's worst offenses in Michigan versus one of the best defenses in the country. So right off the bat, I'm trying to figure out, could the upset happen here? And sure, it's a rivalry game, so anything could happen. But if it is to happen, I mean, I got to get what from Michigan? You play your best defensive football. I'm still having to get probably 20-plus points to feel comfortable that I can win this game. And, man, I guess you got to have really good field position. Special teams have to come through. Obviously, defensive turnovers, defensive scoring, that would be great. You've probably got to get some explosive runs from Khalil Mullins, the tailback. And I say that very intentionally because I don't think they'll sustain drives against Ohio State. Kind of like the game 2 years ago here. Now, they were not nearly as offensively challenged then as they are now, but remember how that worked. They had a ton of rushing yards, but there were a couple of really, really big, like 70-plus yard explosive plays, I think it was, and that really changed the game. So you've got to get some kind of version of that here to try and just cobble together 20 points, 24 points. And even then, you got to come through. You got to shut down Ohio State, but at least that gives you a chance. Everything is still in a state of flux for Ohio State. Not in a bad way. I don't say that to mean they're discombobulated. I say that to mean if there's anyone out there that's foolish enough to be concerned about Ohio State maybe overlooking this a little bit, first off, just no, full stop. Secondly, even if you are concerned about that and you're concerned that they're looking ahead to the Big Ten championship game, they're not in it yet, guys. They haven't clinched it yet. Everybody's projections have them there because they assume a 3+ touchdown favorite or thereabouts will win here, but they still got to do it. So they'd be locked in if they were 5-5, but they'll be locked in especially because there's still everything to play for here. They haven't locked anything up yet. Do you let their defensive line handle you? One of the areas Michigan could throw this thing into a blender if they did would be maybe with those offensive line injuries, it gets exposed a week later. Indiana did not expose it. If it's there to be exposed, maybe Michigan exposes it. Maybe that's how they crash the interior, and who knows? Anything can happen. When you throw the timing and rhythm of an offense off, anything can happen. Now, Chip Kelly's one of the best in the country, so I don't expect him to call a game that allows that to happen. But if you're that good defensively, then you can make people's game plans go sideways pretty quickly. You better, because you are not, in all likelihood, shutting down their passing game. Michigan is very average against the pass this year, and that's even if they're healthy, and they may not be totally healthy in their secondary. They don't have an elite pressure rate, but again, a one-off situation where maybe you crash, you get pressure inside, that could lead to any of a number of results. Got a lot of people watching the show, by the way. Make sure you subscribe to the show. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because we do this thing free all year. And the only thing that we ask is you subscribe. Doesn't cost you anything, doesn't commit you to anything. You'll forget you even did it, but it helps us. Colston Loveland's questionable in this game. Michigan's leading receiver by 10 miles, and there's not a close second there. He's questionable in this game. Whether he goes or not, I assume that he will. If he can walk, if he can put together coherent sentences, he will go in this game. But it just has splattering alert all over it. Colin, go ahead and show the folks what the line is. We've got FanDuel hanging Ohio State minus 20.5. Our model's got Ohio State minus 21. I've just seen this play out too many times. I don't think there is a number high enough where I wouldn't take Ohio State, but this one's not high enough. So you give me Ohio State to win. You give me Ohio State to cover. There is no letting up. There is no taking the foot off the gas. I mean, if Ryan Day was willing to drive the dagger into Kurt Signetti's neck last week, imagine what he'd be willing to do if he gets the opportunity against Sharon Moore in Michigan, and I think he will. So it's been a fun 3 years from Michigan, and it could be a fun upcoming 3 years from Michigan, given the current trajectory of recruiting. But as for 2024, it's Ohio State's year. They win, and I think they cover in the process. I've got good news for us. All right. Now, when we started the show a long time ago, remember I told you I'm just in it low-key to get us as much free stuff as we can. So I've gotten us a lot of free stuff. It pales in comparison to where I think we can go. I won't rest until everyone who watches this show gets something free. And I don't mean a T-shirt from PateStateMaterial.com, although that is a destination this time of year. No, I mean just free stuff in your pocket. So, I've been hanging out with ZEVIA. We've been dating, so to speak. We've been quietly hanging out, as any of a number of professional athletes have been rumored to have done with Sydney Sweeney. It's never true, but it circulates on the internet, right? Well, we have been publicly hanging out with ZEVIA. I asked for zero sugar soda, and they delivered it. And so, a couple of things you need to know. I'm going to open one and drink it as I talk, by the way. It's now available nationwide at Walmart. You go wherever you want to, but I'm just telling you it's available nationwide at Walmart, and I need you to pay attention. The cream soda is legit. Right now, starting this moment, I've got us some free stuff. So, if you head over to your local Walmart, most of you will this time of year, just grab some ZEVIA, head out to the parking lot, do what you've already been doing. ZEVIA's been paying attention, so they're just asking me to remind you to keep doing this. A lot of you have been snapping pictures in the parking lot of the store that you bought it in. Well, if you're doing it at Walmart, you might want to feature that Walmart signage. You might want to make it obvious you're at a Walmart. Put that little hashtag ZEVIA Pate State in it as you tag yourself, because not only might you get just the garden variety like or retweet, anybody could do that. No, I'm getting 22 of you a $100 Walmart gift card, and I'm going to get 3 of you what we would call a grand prize, I guess, Jesse and Colin, and that is not only the $100 Walmart gift card, I'm getting you a pack of my personal favorite, which is the cream soda, but if that's not enough, also a chalice of supremacy, which you cannot buy. You can buy ZEVIA. You cannot buy a chalice of supremacy. And 3 of you, your grand prize winners, you're going to get that. So it's easy. Just do what you've already been doing. Heading to Walmart, grabbing the ZEVIA, taking the picture, tagging me, ZEVIA Pate State. But grand prize this time of year, and 25 of you are going to take home a $100 gift card. So there you go. We're working on it. I'm trying to get you as much free stuff as I can. I know how far $100 goes this time of year. Trust me, I know. And then on top of that, I mean, how far would a chalice go? Imagine re-gifting a chalice of supremacy around Christmas, which it is your constitutional right to do if you win one. All right, let's get back to the show here. A lot of rivalry games to talk about. South Carolina at Clemson, you don't have to wait for it. It's kicking off high noon Eastern time. They're 12 o'clock on ESPN. This one is at Clemson, and last time South Carolina was there, I was surprised by the result. They won it, and it kind of made everyone go, wait, they did what now? And then last year, Clemson won a slugfest. So this year, it's back at Clemson. There's no way this game fails to deliver. I am predicting minimum a 3.5 chali rating out of 5 on this game. That's the over-under, 3.5 chali. It's an extremely high over-under. Which way are these programs trending? That's not always an indicator of how a game's going to go. But humor me, if you're listening right now or watching right now, which way does it feel like these programs are trending? I think most people would say it feels like Clemson's trending down and South Carolina's trending up. Now, what is momentum worth to you? Because to me, momentum lasts as long as the next game you play, especially when you're playing each other. And it doubly especially when it's an in-state rivalry and you're playing each other. So Clemson's got everything they need here. They're a short 2.5-point favorite. They're at home. And they're both still in the running. Do you understand what the ramifications are here? They're both in the running for a playoff spot. Clemson has faced 2 teams that I have in my JP poll top 30. Not the end-all, be-all, just broad strokes purposes. I'm trying to tell you the quality of team that they've played. They've played 2 teams that I have in my personal top 30. That's Georgia and Louisville. I think we remember how those 2 games went. They got blasted by Georgia. They kind of got blasted by Louisville as well. They've played 8 FBS teams outside of the top 80 or 50. Yeah, 50 sounds more right. They've outscored them 339 to 161. So basically what we're asking here is Clemson legitimate? Like, there's no in between. Are they legitimate, or are they a team that can get fat on inferior competition, but they have real scaling issues? Scaling meaning, of course, when you face legitimate competition, that stat profile does not carry over proportionally. I always love to take phraseology from our buddies at College Football Nerds. Scaling, how do they scale? I love it. I give them full permission to steal from me. Most of the time it's just quirky anecdotes that they steal from me. South Carolina, if they stick to their script here, they're good. Now, that's easier said than done, but they are a top 30 explosive play group offensively. And Clemson's defense, 94th in the country in explosive plays allowed. You can get them on the ground, through the air. You can get Clemson. South Carolina had turnover issues earlier in the season, but in this recent stretch of consecutive wins they've had, they're plus 3 turnovers in their last 5 games. Clemson's defense, they thrive off of creating turnovers, getting positive field position off turnovers, and if you take that from them, that's a vital element of their team profile that you've taken from them. So again, that's the script. That's what South Carolina has been. Will they be that here? I think Cade Klubnik, the Clemson quarterback, is the most important player in this game. He is the padlock stat. If you tell me how his day is going to go, I think I can tell you how this game's going to go. The splits for him relative to competition are pretty significant. It mirrors what Clemson as a team is. He's been very good at home, and especially against inferior competition, and then when the competition level ramps up, not so much. And I have got him at home, but I've got him against the best pass rush I think he'll see all year. South Carolina's 8th in the country in pressure rate. Clemson, 69th in pressure rate allowed. Cade Klubnik's got to have the best game of his season here. It's a big open-ended question mark sort of thing. I'm not saying he won't. I'm saying, will he? Like he needs to. Clemson has allowed 9 sacks in their last 2 games against Power 4 teams. So that's how you wreck the game if you're South Carolina. Let's take a look at what the model thinks. The number right now at FanDuel is Clemson minus 2.5. Model largely agrees. We got Clemson minus 3. I think that the model has been wrong on Clemson most of the year. It took me until later in the season to realize it, but it was a little too high. I think it was right on Miami. I think it's been too high on Clemson. I still think it's a little too high on Clemson. I just think it's having trouble ingesting that stat profile because there's such a difference in scaling, like I said. All of their hay has been made against inferior teams, and the 2 shots they've gotten against teams more the caliber of South Carolina, they haven't done anything. I mean, in fact, they've had things done to them. I think South Carolina's going to win the game outright. Hell, who knows? Maybe if it was a night game, I'd feel differently. I think South Carolina's going to go in there and get the win, and it's going to be really, really big for both programs. It will be either way. I don't know. I just feel good about South Carolina right now, so I'll give them a slight edge. They're watching us. I'll tell you where they're watching us. They're watching us in Livingston, Alabama. I think that's where West Alabama is, University of. They're watching us in Bozeman, Montana, Paradise, Arizona. Who knows where else they're watching us tonight? But I appreciate you guys. I've got breaking news here. The latest edition of the JP poll has been released. Here it is, right here. The JP poll is not the playoff rankings. The JP poll is not the AP poll. The JP poll is not really even a poll. But I'm not changing the name because it's really catchy and it sounds good. The JP poll is just a power rating. We take this model here, and we ask the model to do the same thing that FanDuel would do, and that is stack teams based on neutral field favorability. And it means nothing more than that. You're going to find in the top 20, I have a couple of teams that are barely above 500. But it doesn't matter because the model would favor them against a bunch of teams below them. This is supposed to be nothing more than a reference tool. It's not meant to project on anything other than project who would be favored against who. So let's go. Number 1 through 5. We got the same number 1 team we had last week. Ohio State, the model would still favor against any team in the country. Oregon's number 2. As of now, we are projecting number 1 versus number 2 in the Big Ten championship game. So there you go on that. Georgia is number 3. Texas is number 4. Notre Dame is number 5. And I got a little added just bonus nugget here for you. Whew, I can't believe this. There is, according to the model, there's only a 5.75 point gap between number 1 and number 5. So what that means is, if Ohio State played Notre Dame tomorrow in, who knows, Kansas City, whatever, Ohio State, according to the model, would be a 5.75 point favorite. So I think a lot of you would bet on that, and that's fine, but that's what the model thinks. Penn State is number 6. They're up 2 spots. Ole Miss is down to 7. Now, this is the first part where I have to stop and remind you, this is not a ranking. Ole Miss is not in my top 10 if I'm on the playoff committee. But Ole Miss still, in terms of neutral field favorability, is not going to drop all that much if we had them all the way up inside the top 5 last week and they lost because of turnover. They lost because of lack of red zone execution. This is not excuse making. It's saying that those are not predictive elements. In other words, if we play the game again, those aren't things that are disproportionately likely to happen again. So I always have to qualify this because I'm just envisioning the comment section. The people who run their mouth the most about this never listen to the explanation anyway, so why do I waste my time? Good question. Let's move on. Alabama's number 8. I think Alabama's a little bit too high, honestly. I think the model is still a little too high on Alabama because I think the talent profile that's baked in for that team still has it slightly higher than they should be. Tennessee's number 9. Clemson is number 10. Okay, now that's a team that I think is overrated according to the model. Bama and Clemson, I think, both are higher than they should be, but I understand why they're there. So, again, models telling you it would favor Clemson against any team in the ACC. Miami and SMU, they would favor Clemson against both of them if they played on a neutral field. As of now, it doesn't look like Clemson will get that opportunity. That's up to the number 11 team. Number 11 is Miami. Number 12 is South Carolina. I said it's up to number 11 because if Miami loses to Syracuse, then we may see Clemson in the ACC championship game. South Carolina's at number 12. SMU's at 13. Indiana's at 14. Think about that. Not only are SMU and Indiana ranked high, but there are a lot of teams. BYU has been a perfect example of a team that's been ranked high, but we never had them power rated high. But there's a lot of meat on the bone with SMU and Indiana. Even after they lost a game, we didn't drop Indiana that far. We dropped them to 14. It's just remarkable that those teams could be that high. Tulane's 15. Tulane, I would favor by 7 against Boise State if they played neutral field right now. Tulane is definitively the best G5 team in the country, but they may not get the G5 nod. They got to win. They got to beat Memphis. They got to win the AAC championship game. If they do that, I'm telling you, if I'm a committee member, that'd be my G5 team. But it looks like Boise would be the G5 team as of now if they win out. Iowa State, I've got at 16, and even though they're down 2 spots, we would have them as the best team in the Big 12 right now on paper, like neutral field, stuff like that. A&M's at 17. Florida is now a top 20 team, according to the model. Florida is 6-5. USC is 19th. They're 6-5. And yet, in terms of neutral field favorability, just power rating stuff, they're both top 20 teams. You know as well as I do, when we release this graphic on social, everyone will zoom in on Florida and USC. And the thing about it is they've been zooming in on Florida for 2 weeks, laughing at the fact we had them top 25. And then Florida has beaten LSU and Ole Miss consecutively. No one's come back to say they apologize. Like Florida, I don't know if anyone's been noticing this. Jesse and Colin, have you heard anyone apologize? Florida's done nothing but validate their existence in the top 25 of a power rating. And everyone just laughs at it on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and no one says a peep on Saturday night. Shocker. Let's see what else we got here. Arizona State's at 20. I want to go back to USC. USC, there is a wild stat that we uncovered today when we were doing show prep. Let's see if I remember it off the top of my head. So there are, what is it, Jesse? 6 teams total, right, that have led in the fourth quarter of every game they've played this year. So out of all of FBS, there are 6 teams that have led in the fourth quarter of every game they've played. USC is one of those 6 teams. USC has 5 losses. The other 5 combined have 5 losses. That is meant to tell you nothing more than USC is, on paper, a lot better than just your garden variety 5-loss team. They are a 5-loss team. That's what should matter. And in the rankings, it does. In power ratings, it does not. In power ratings, it just means you got an extremely underrated team as it relates to a predictive, like future-facing model. Louisville's at 21. Kansas is at 22. We had Kansas in the top 27 last week, I think it was. And now we got them in the number 22 spot. Michigan's crept their way back in there. Interesting. Iowa has been floating in this range all year. And Baylor is unchanged. Baylor's at number 25. I think that's one of the low-key stories of the year, too. You notice how all the stories of the year are happening in the Big 12? Like, so many of the stories of the year, we had Brigham Young, we had Arizona State, Colorado. Now Baylor just has gone from who's going to take Dave Aranda's spot to no one because Dave Aranda is going to be the head coach here. What a time to be alive in the Big 12. And almost everyone is. So there's the JP poll. Have fun with it. Immunity. Shameful. Notre Dame versus USC, one of the great rivalry games of my youth and your youth and everyone's, because it's a great rivalry game every year. It's one of the quintessential uniform games in college football, as long as they don't wear these things they wore against Army last week. This is the 3:30 Eastern, 12:30 local time CBS game of the week this week. And it's a good thing that Notre Dame travels a lot, because I don't know that I trust many other teams playing in New York City one week and LA the next week. But that's what they're doing. Meanwhile, USC has not left the West Coast in a month. They did all their traveling earlier in the year. They hadn't left the West Coast in a while. So a little travel dynamics advantage for USC here. I'm going to read this stat again because some of you are just watching this individual video and you didn't watch the whole live show. There are 6 teams in FBS that have led every one of their games in the fourth quarter. 6 of them. USC is one of those 6 teams. USC is a 5-loss team. The other 5 teams combined have lost 5 games. It's been there for them. Every single game. There's not a single game they hadn't led in the fourth quarter, which is just, it's mind-boggling. And it's maddening. But that also means they're probably a lot more dangerous than that 6-5 record indicates. So the stat sheet versus reality conversation is where I'm at with Notre Dame on this. And by the way, if you are watching just the individual video, do us a favor, subscribe to the channel. Because we do these long-form shows. This is from the long-form show, and we appreciate it. And it doesn't cost anything to subscribe to the channel, and we just do college football all year round. We appreciate it if you do. Stat sheet versus reality. Is Notre Dame this good? Notre Dame's been rolling, man. We got JP Poll's got them top 5. Playoff committee's got them way up there. The AP's got them way up there. They got a top 5 defense. I mean, listen to this. Points per game allowed, top 5. Yards allowed, top 5. Pass yards per game. Explosive plays allowed. Takeaways. Notre Dame's defense, top 5 in all the categories. They've played 4 G5 teams. They've played 3 of the bottom 6 offenses in P4. They have faced 1 top 40 passing offense. That was Louisville, and that was a turnover fest. And they have faced 6 offenses 100th or worse in pass yards per game. This is an age-old situation that we find ourselves in college football, where you've got a team whose stat profile is elite, and they may be an elite team. It's hard to know based on the quality of opponent they faced. So we've got one of 2 possibilities here with Notre Dame, and I'm not here to suggest either one. I'm here to say they could be fraudulent. I'm here to say they could be the best team in the country. We can't fully know because they haven't played like Georgia's schedule. That's no one's fault. I'm not dismissing them, nothing like that. I'm just saying, if I watch Usain Bolt race kindergartners, he is Usain Bolt, but it would be tough to know that because he's racing kindergartners. He looks ultra impressive, but he's racing kindergartners. Now we get to find out because the season's not going to end this week. Notre Dame is going to have a lot more on their plate, but first they got to beat USC. It's a big game for Lincoln Riley, man. This offensive staff, forget about leading in the fourth quarter. You got to win one of these things. Jordan Mailata, this is his 3rd game starting at quarterback for USC. He's got a good group of wide receivers. Woody Marks at tailback, averaging a little over 5.5 yards per carry. They can maintain balance here. Like, they can achieve balance. It doesn't have to be statistical, but they have to achieve balance. They have to establish both facets. And if they do that, they can have some success against Notre Dame. They can, because at that point, they'd be presenting something that Notre Dame hasn't seen. They can't get bullied. That's what can't happen. Notre Dame cannot stone them up front, and then you're asking a guy who's barely started for you to go win the game single-handedly. That can't be the spot you find yourself in. That's why I say it's such a big game for Lincoln Riley. I mean, this is a scheme game. This is a play-calling game, and Lincoln Riley's been under a moderate to heavy amount of fire this year from that fan base about the way he's managed some games and called some games. I think some of that's maybe misunderstood sometimes. I don't really traffic in it a whole lot, but it's been there. Notre Dame leads the country in takeaways defensively. So if this is a game that you can't run the ball successfully in, and you ask Mailata to throw the ball 45 times, maybe he's successful. I would not count on it. This is a toughness game. They've played much better defensively at USC. Notre Dame always plays good defensively. But can USC do something different? So I was just talking about the game script there for them offensively. What do you make Notre Dame do? You know, Notre Dame's had the lead on just about everyone. So they've made just about everyone have to throw the ball to keep up. And then also, they've had the lead, so they have not been in a position where they have to ask Riley Leonard to play catch up a whole lot. Can you put them in that situation? I mean, USC at their best has played razor-tight games. What if they get up 17-3? You know, what if they put Notre Dame in one of those situations where they got to play catch up? Just some ways that this would go differently. I've had a feeling about this game for a couple of weeks. I don't think it's being talked about nearly enough. It's USC Notre Dame, so it should be talked about anyway. but especially with the ramifications on the line. Colin, let's take a look at what the model thinks. Right now, FanDuel's got Notre Dame minus 7.5. We think the number's too fat. We've got Notre Dame minus 5.5. Friends, I think we're going to see the outright upset. This is the one. That vibe Auburn had last week, I think USC is going to end up having. They find a way, and it's a celebratory thing if you're a USC fan, but then it's a really, really like, the more you think about it, the more angry you get sort of situation of, wow, I'm so glad we did this, but why did it take until the end of the year for us to do this? I don't know, but be thankful you do it. So this is future tense thinking here if USC pulls it off. I think USC is going to win the game outright. Give me Lincoln Riley to have his play calling game of the year. Give me USC to have their game of the year. At that point, who knows where Notre Dame goes in the playoff rankings, but I think USC gets one done. Moving right along, the Iron Bowl is this Saturday. Anyone paying attention here? Bama welcoming in Auburn, Saturday, 3:30 Eastern, 2:30 local time. ABC has the game. You know, Alabama versus Georgia really happened. Alabama versus LSU really happened. That's the good news. The bad news is Alabama versus Vandy happened. Alabama versus Tennessee happened. Alabama versus Oklahoma happened. Bipolar Bama, BPB. Which one do we get? I would almost say it's not a waste of time to try and predict these games because you want to be one step ahead. Like you want to see around the corner. That's what we're trying to do here. But man, once these games kick off, I've got my pick just like everyone else, but I kind of sit there and just go, oh, here we go. Alrighty, someone's going to be really right or really wrong. Auburn's best game was always there, by the way. Last week, they beat Texas A&M. They did not finish minus turnovers. Peyton Thorne over 300 yards. Jarquez Hunter went off. Cam Coleman went off. Keandre Lambert-Smith went off. Everything that we've known was there offensively showed up, and they didn't shoot themselves in the foot. And what'd they do? They got a win over a highly ranked opponent at home. They could do it again. Tuscaloosa hadn't been easy on them, but you know what? Nick Saban wasn't easy on anyone. He's not there anymore. This Alabama team hasn't looked vintage this year, so what better time to go in there and get your first win in a long time in Tuscaloosa? Auburn's offense last week, that's what it should have been for a long time. So can they package that up and take it on the road again? Does the run game do what Oklahoma did to Alabama? I don't know necessarily that Peyton Thorne has been a focal point of that run game this year. They should run Peyton Thorne a fair amount in this game. Jarquez Hunter, of course, is going to run the ball a fair amount. I think he had 28 carries last week. I bet he's 24, 25-plus carries this week. I think Peyton Thorne ought to run the ball a fair amount. Until Bama shows they can stop that stuff, you do it. If you've got any kind of athleticism at quarterback, and Thorne is plenty good enough, he's got, how many did we count? He's got 14 games of double-digit rushing attempts. He's not a statue by any stretch of the imagination back there. I think that'll be what they make Bama show they can stop. And if Bama doesn't, the game will last about 2.5 hours, and you'll get out of there by 3 and get home in time for a late lunch. Number 2, it becomes academic at that point. Because, I mean, Alabama's got to get to Thorne early because this is a turnover-prone Auburn team with a ton of confidence now. And sometimes that's not a good combo to take on the road. But if they don't have to throw the ball a lot, then that doesn't really matter. So the first part here, and you're down a couple of big players at linebacker if you're Alabama, is you got to get after him. But to do that, you got to earn the right to rush the passer. And to earn the right to rush the passer, you got to stop the run on early downs and create 3rd and 6 pluses. Ton of variance in this game because of that. If Bama's able to do that, there's a world where Bama could get to the quarterback, force turnovers, and they win going away. However, if they don't, and if Auburn's able to standardize this game offensively, there's a world where Auburn just wins it outright. And I know you listen to that and you say, well, that's easy to say. Anyone could say that. I know. It's a very hard game to predict. This one's a very hard game to predict. Marcel Reed last week, the Texas A&M quarterback, 297 through the air, 66 on the ground. So what does Jalen Milroe do against Auburn? Where's his head at this week? What version of Jalen Milroe do we get this week? Because Auburn's got a pretty good run defense. It's a big day for the Alabama wide receiver room. They did him very few favors last week. There's a fair amount of blame to go around everywhere, staff and players, for the way Alabama played last week. But upon second review, it's not all Jalen Milroe. A lot of people up there have said as much, including some of the wide receivers responsible for that. So that's in the past. The future is the Iron Bowl. You barely escaped last year with a 4th and a mile. How do you fare this year? Alabama's an 8-win team if they lose this. 8-4 for Bama? Anyone feeling that? Auburn has to have this game for bowl eligibility. So let's take a look at what the model thinks. FanDuel right now has got Bama minus 11.5. We're pretty much in line with that. We got Bama minus 12. Like I said, there's a world where Bama clicks here, where they respond like they should at home, and Auburn's a little bit too loose, and they turn the ball over, and Alabama wins by 24. Sure, there's a world where that happens. I can't count on that. And so I cannot count on Alabama getting significant margin. And because I can't count on that, I think they're going to win the game. I think Alabama's going to win the game. But I've got no confidence laying double-digit points here. There are too many elements Auburn could bring here. I mean, Auburn could get after Milroe and make them one-dimensional and run the ball on them and just win the game outright. So I'm taking Auburn in the points. Alabama, they're the better team. They're the home team. They should win. But winning and covering, I don't know, man. I don't have enough confidence to lay those. I'm not betting the game either way, but I don't have that confidence. Let me reach over here for my jug of water right quick. Throat's a little dry. How about that, though, Colin? We've made it through the whole year without losing the voice so far. It's the first year it's happened. Knock on this very, very real wood we have on this set. New set, by the way, is coming together. These helmets behind me are placeholders. If you're listening on podcast, we just put stuff back there so it doesn't look naked, as Meemaw would say. But we are waiting for you to design the set for us. And I already had a number of you hit me up and ask for the studio address, so you can send me all sorts of things that you think would fit here. I want the set to be something that means something to you, because I'm not good at this stuff anyway, and I want you to design it. So we're waiting. It's only been 2 days. Nothing's had time to get in yet. I can't wait to see what we end up adding to this set. I can't promise you everything you send is going to go on the set, but I promise you I don't want to design it. Okay, hold on. I have something on my teeth. I can't have this next segment. There we go. It was a sunflower seed. I can't have this next segment be blown up by something on my teeth. North Carolina's firing Mack Brown. Matt Zenitz broke that story earlier today. Everyone else cited him, but one pretty noteworthy person in the space that has trouble doing that. So whatever. Matt Zenitz has been really good at breaking it. If you're not following Matt Zenitz, you need to be following him. Dude is a bulldog when it comes to breaking news, and that's a name that'll be around in that space for a long time. 6 seasons at North Carolina, was not ready to go. As recently as this week, he had publicly said, I don't want to go anywhere. I'm still in it. My heart's still in it. And then Bubba Cunningham, the athletic director there, made the decision that you're not going to do it here anymore. So I think this thing felt like it peaked a couple of years ago. They were the number 11 class in recruiting in 2022. They were 9-5 that year. Things had slipped off a little bit, obviously. They made a lot of staff changes this past cycle, weren't good defensively at all. Gene Chizik was out. Jeff Collins was in. They were what they were this year. So it's not the biggest shock in the world because the results weren't there. But I got to tell you something. I'm really emotionally tied to this one. And I didn't talk about it a lot this year. It may even be unprofessional. That's okay. I've never called myself a journalist for that reason. Because there's some of these guys I really like. Mack Brown, I really like. So I couldn't even objectively cover Mack Brown in North Carolina. I could be critical of him, but I didn't want to be. Let me put it that way. So I got to tell you a story. Now that this tenure has come and gone, we went there in the spring. We went to Chapel Hill in the spring. It was my first time there. And we told Mack Brown and his people, we're coming, we want to do something called the Pate State Speaker Series, and it's just a sit-down conversation. And you saw it in the spring. We did it with a number of coaches. So, I had done Beamer the day before. I was going to go up to Blacksburg, and I was going to do Brent Pry and Virginia Tech the next day. So it made sense to go to North Carolina. They were right there in between. We'd never been there before. If we can make it happen, yeah, okay, let's make it happen. Mack Brown had been a head coach 36 years. Guy's probably done thousands and thousands of sit-downs and interviews and had thousands of media interactions. He had never talked to me before in his life. I got to tell you, it was a pretty transformative experience to be there that day. I took a couple of members of my crew there, and Mack Brown had all the time in the world for us. And Mack Brown, when you meet him, it's so obvious how authentic he is, how genuine he is. It's so obvious why you've never met anyone who speaks ill of him. And I just want to talk about the person for a second. You get judged in this business based on results. That's fair. He'd be the first one to tell you that's fair. He would defend his stance vigorously, but he would tell you that's fair. But the way we left there that day, feeling like we had known him for 36 years, was really amazing. I have a lot of interactions with these guys, and they're all good to us. Mack Brown was good to us in a way that your grandfather is good to you. Mack Brown was good to us in a way above and beyond how anyone should feel the need to be good to us. Didn't need to be that way. It could have been just a little Excel spreadsheet box that he had to check off on his schedule that day. But just the wisdom, the applied knowledge, that's what wisdom is, of lessons he had learned through his career, a lot of advice, just brilliant perspective on everything from rule making and the inconsistency behind that in some cases, to the shifts in the world of revenue sharing and NIL, how you develop players, how you recruit players, how you sell your program and your vision to them, how you handle staffing, how you fire someone on your staff when it's time to, how you maintain a standard, how you reflect the standard that you want brought out from the rest of your organization. Just so much stuff that you're sitting there. You call yourself interviewing someone, but the best thing you can do is just keep your mouth shut, because the guy doesn't need questions. He doesn't need to be teed up. And so he's just going and going and going. I swear to you, we could have stayed there another 5 hours if we wanted to. He had just come off an ACC coaches meeting that probably got a little contentious from what I could tell. And so he was ready to go. And I will never forget that. One of our producers, she's not with us anymore. I mean, she's still alive. She's just doing something else now. She's there in the room behind the camera. And I saw her tear up like 3 or 4 times. I mean, Mack Brown really connected. And I mean, I would love if he got himself back into media again. I don't know what he plans on doing. I have not talked to him today. I've stayed in contact with him since then, but I've not talked to him today. Not the time for it. But I hope he gets back in media. I really do, because that guy's got a lot more left to give to the game of football to me, and he's leaving that program better. The results, you can say they weren't good enough, and I won't fight you on that. But what I always care about is, did you leave the place better than you got it? And by any discernible metric, North Carolina football is in a better place than before Mack Brown got there. And that's a testament to him. That's credit to him. But I'll tell you what else that means. That means someone's walking into a really good situation. And I texted back and forth with a few coaches today. Couple of them who could be up for this job. Many more of them who are totally set where they're at, and they already have better jobs than North Carolina. You would not believe how highly thought of the North Carolina job is. Dude, folks think North Carolina is like this low-key sleeping giant, and you can disagree with that if you want to. That's fine. I am not even giving you my opinion, although I do agree with that, but I'm not giving you my opinion. I'm giving you the opinion of people who are head coaches. I talked to like 7 or 8 of them today about this, and they all pointed out that Arizona and the Carolinas are 2 of the most underrated recruiting hotbeds in America. It's been that way for a long time. We are entering the world of revenue sharing, where even if you can't fully get your boosters on board with like being all in for football, it still will matter, but to a certain degree, it doesn't matter as much, because you're still going to have a lot of money to pay guys. You're in a great place to live. Coaching staffs love it there. Some of them keep their homes there even if they go elsewhere. But think about this part. You can make really good money there. You can recruit really good athletes there. It's a world-class education that you're selling. You're in still one of the premier conferences in college football, and who knows what the future holds with realignment. But even as of now, you're in a really good place. But think about the expectation level. This is kind of what you would say about Mark Stoops at Kentucky. Mark Stoops has been there forever. He's made himself a ton of money, wins 7 games a year, and they think about you like you're the greatest thing since sliced bread. At North Carolina, I would say the expectation level would be like a little bit higher than that, but no one is demanding national championships from you when you come in there. If you win one, that's wonderful, and they'd rename the city after you. But it's the resource pool, the salary pool for assistants, the ties geographically to recruiting, the institution, and then the expectation level. And those are calibrated at such a level, respectively, that it's very attractive for a lot of head coaches. Dan Mullen's name, I think, will be tied to this. There's been a pretty widely held belief in the industry that Dan Mullen has looked at this job and has thought it to be interesting. Now, that may get shot down tonight. He may say, nope, no interest tonight. Because I'm not telling you it's some guarantee. I'm saying there's probably interest there. I think there would be big interest from a Barry Odom, who has done great things at UNLV. And I think John Summerall at Tulane is a future superstar wherever he goes at the power level. I think Alex Golish is another name that's very high on my list. I haven't heard Golish specifically tied to this job. The other three I kind of have. But I'd look at him. I'm saying if I ran North Carolina, I'd look at all those guys. I would lean younger, only because I want a guy there for the long term. It's not like Mullen's 70 years old or anything like that. But those are the names I'd look at. Those are the names that I think will be tied to it. And that's just kicking around a few rocks today. I'm sure there will be many more names that surface here. But Mack Brown, man, if no one else says it to him today, he's got a place at Pate State forever. I really, really appreciated what he did for us. You spend so many years around some people and they don't impact your life as much as that guy impacted mine, being around him 3 hours, one afternoon in the spring in Chapel Hill. So salute to Mack Brown. If this is it, what a career it's been. Nearly 4 decades just of head coaching experience and a national championship winner. And now what do we have? We've got Dabo and Kirby as the only active head coaches who have ever won a national title. But yet, if you haven't won one, people will ask, what have you won? What have you won? FanDuel, the exclusive odds provider of our show here. It's a big weekend coming up. Rivalry weekend. I need to remind you, the whole Bet 5 to win 150 promotion still very active. New signups. You can use this QR code on the screen. You can go to FanDuel.com/CFB promotion. Whatever you do, if you're a new sign-up, you bet $5. You don't even have to do it against the spread. You can do it on a money line. You can do Ohio State money line against Michigan. If it wins, you get $150 in free bonus bets. Just free money. Well, it's basically free money. Go take it. Got a bunch of profit boosts coming up this week. Some of those big games will have profit boost tokens. Guys, this is free value. You have to be taking advantage of that. I don't, and I'm not going to pass off commentary on the kind of bets you guys put in. But you need to care more about value and money management. I care about best bets. That's why I'm adding 1, 2, 3 games on the Ramen Noodle Express. 4. I'm actually adding 4 tonight. So we're already on Boston College minus 3.5 against Pitt. We're already on West Virginia plus 3.5 against Texas Tech. We're adding 4 games here. Colin, can you believe it on Tuesday night? The first one, Utah plus 9.5 at UCF. We're again on Kennesaw State plus 12.5 against Louisiana Tech. We are not only taking USC, it's a best bet. USC is plus 7.5 at FanDuel right now. I'm taking that as a best bet, and I am also making Ohio State minus 20.5 a best bet. So, yeah, I sit here and pick USC to win outright. I better be taking them plus 7.5 as a best bet. All right, a few more games to get to here in the interest of, the fact that this is our last show of the week. A lot of upset alerts. Big-time upset alerts on the radar this weekend. The way we like to do it around here is I put a concern rating on the upset alert meter. Like, that, just because I mentioned this game doesn't mean I'm picking the upset. I'm just kind of letting you know how concerned I am about it. So, for example, Georgia Tech plays Georgia Friday in Athens. This is a Friday game. It's very atypical, but it is a Friday game, 7:30 Eastern Friday night. I've got a 4 on this game. Upset alert concern, a 4. Here's why. First off, that's not a high rating, but here's why. Haynes King, when he starts at quarterback for Georgia Tech, they're 7-2. Georgia has already clinched the East. This game does matter because it's a rivalry game, and if Georgia loses this one, they've got no margin for error next week in Atlanta. So it does matter, but there is just the whole Brent Key in a big game element in play. There's a slight scheduling dynamics edge in play for Georgia Tech. So It bears watching. I'll put a 4 on it. Not high, I'll put a 4 on it. Now, this next one, yeah, it does bear very close watching. Tennessee is a 10.5-point favorite at Vanderbilt. I've got a 7 on this game. It's right down the road from our studio in Nashville. Other than the South Carolina game, Vandy has either won every game they've played or they've been within one possession. So Texas didn't blow them out. LSU didn't blow them out. And now they're at home where they beat Alabama. They played Texas close. Tennessee's coming in. They've held 6 straight opponents to 20 or less. Top 40 run defense. Tennessee defense focused on the quarterback. Top 40 run outfit here. I think Tennessee will be locked in. I think they will win the game. Maybe I even think they'll cover. But I've also seen Tennessee get shut out in the first half too often. I've seen Vandy hang around in games far too often this year that the paper, says they have no business being in. This is the Super Bowl moment for Vandy. And I'm going to put a 7 on the upset alert concern meter. They've lost 3 of their last 4. Obviously, it's a lot harder when you're facing Texas. At Auburn, they just went and won. South Carolina, LSU, it's hard. But you can close it out here with a win. I'm going to put a 7 on it. Washington is at Oregon. Don't think it's going to happen. Happened twice last year, though. So I think they've got Oregon's attention. I'm going to put a 3 on this one, on the upset alert concern meter. Oregon's already in the Big Ten championship game. So it means a lot. Let me just put your mind at ease. This game means a lot. Washington beat them twice last year. It doesn't matter if none of those players are there anymore. That helmet looks the same. Washington's 0-4 on the road this year, and 3 of those losses have come by 14+. Oregon's coming off a bye. The indicators are all pointing down for Washington. So I'm going to take Oregon to win, and I don't know if they're going to cover. I don't have a strong feel on the spread, but upset alert concern not particularly high for me on this one. But the next game, oh boy. Miami, you know what they do this week? They go on the road to Syracuse. Now, that game is indoors. That's the good news. But this is the first game of the season where Cam Ward will not be the leading passer. Do you realize that? Kyle McCord, the Ohio State transfer, Kyle McCord, 358.7 yards per game passing. He's leading the country. Syracuse has got the number 1 quarterback in the country in that stat department. I'm going to put a 7 on this game. This isn't some gimme. This is not a gimme at all. Miami's laying 10.5. Syracuse is top 50 in pass defense. Syracuse is 4th themselves offensively. They're 4th in passes of 20+ yards. So they can stretch the field vertically, explosively. They can limit you through the air. It's just got all the makings of a game that is very close in the fourth quarter. I've got a 7 on this one. Miami's got to have this one to go to the ACC championship game. It bears close watching. Memphis is at Tulane. I think that game's a Thursday night. I think this is Thanksgiving night. I think Tulane's the best G5 team out there. Memphis, 4th best turnover margin in the country. That's their route here. I've got a 6 on the upset alert concern meter. Tulane's competing with Boise. They need style points. So at every opportunity that they can to get margin in this game, they will get margin. Tulane's played 6 straight games. Memphis is off a bye. It's a big schedule dynamic advantage for Memphis. They are playing in New Orleans, but laying 13.5, I think Tulane gets the job done. I'm going to put a 6 on it because of the scheduling stuff. And then the Big 12 this week. So the Big 12, just the whole thing, could be a mess. There are still 31 active conference title scenarios entering Week 14. So Kansas State's at Iowa State. Iowa State -2.5 at FanDuel. Houston's at Brigham Young. Cougars -13.5 at FanDuel. Arizona State at FanDuel, 8.5-point favorite against Arizona. Oklahoma State is a 16.5-point dog at Colorado. All those courtesy of FanDuel. So if all 4 favorites win, we think it'll be Iowa State, Arizona State in the Big 12 championship game. And I just want to tell you, I was looking at the odds to win the Big 12 over at FanDuel before we went on air, and Iowa State is +260. They're not favored to win the Big 12 right now. Arizona State is. What a headline that is, by the way, to tell your July self. I am taking some action myself on Iowa State +260. You guys can follow me or not. There is bias here. I am an Iowa State homer, because all of us who grew up in West Central Georgia tend to lean Iowa State. There's just something in the water. But at FanDuel right now, if you like Iowa State, you can plus 260. You can get them to win the conference. That's where I'm going anyway. I'm also going home. Going home because it's Thanksgiving week, and I have got to head down to Georgia, the west central portion of Georgia that I haven't been in a while. You know, every time I go home, there's always some stuff in the Instagram story of questionable legality. I don't want to be any more specific than that. At Late Kick Josh, you can follow if you want. But we'll also be in College Station Saturday night for Texas A&M. We'll be on the sideline for that game, and that's when the real good stuff in the Instagram story comes. If you followed all year, you know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't followed all year, what are you doing? Also, Friday night lines. Friday night will emanate from a hotel in College Station. I can't remember where we're staying. Probably Billy Lucci's house, if I had to guess. But at Late Kick Josh, you guys got to be following. Appreciate you so much. So many of you have recruited friends and family and distant relatives and strangers on the bus to subscribe to the channel. Please keep doing that, because we're soaring right now. Our numbers are through the roof. But if you think you're subscribed, check and make sure. Because every time I say that, like a dozen of you hit me up and say, I'm glad you said that. I thought I was subscribed to the channel. I wasn't. I thought I was subscribed to the podcast. I wasn't. Check and make sure. We'll be back Sunday night, and we'll be reacting to Rivalry Week, and we'll be ready to go into Conference Championship Week, and we're hitting our stride right now. So lock in. It's going to be a long December, as the County Crows would say, but a fun one. You're at the right place. Appreciate you guys. Enjoy your Thanksgiving. For Director Colin, for Producer Jesse, I'm Josh Pate. Take care. We'll see you back here Sunday night. Until then, God bless.